Greetings. I got this. Okay, yeah, you can do it.
Got here. I think.
What?
Who wants to fight? Dylan, Wyatt. I told you not. Okay. We are so glad that you guys have joined us. I can't believe the semester is over with you guys here on campus. It seems like every week we had our fingers crossed. Hunter back there is like, every week on Tuesday morning I checked, are we still in school? But thankfully we made it. We're thankful that you guys have continued to show up. This has been our biggest and most faithful group of college students that I've been here. This is year 8 that have been consistently coming, so I applaud you guys for that. So thank you for showing up. And I hope you guys have one last night of great worship. Brennan bringing out all the stops. They're bringing in the closer to preach tonight, to send us home. So hope you guys enjoy the night.
So 8 years, that's like half your life. Thank you, Seth, for that wonderful welcome. So good to see everyone. I'm right there with him. It just does not seem real that we made it through the semester. It's unreal. So I can't believe it's here. And something I would like to recognize, I really need y'all to worship as loudly as you possibly can tonight, because tonight is a special night, not only to worship, but it is Daniel, our wonderful, amazing drummer. It's his last gathering before he goes on rotations. So I want y'all to give it up for Daniel tonight. Yeah. He's worthy of that, and Daniel is only exceeded in his talent by his love of Christ and his heart. So we love you, and we thank God for you, man. So let's stand and lift him up and lift Jesus up too. Don't forget about Jesus too. But tonight's for Jesus and Daniel. So, but let's worship together.
Praise the King, He is risen. Praise the King, He's alive. Praise the King, death's defeated. Hallelujah, He's alive. Hallelujah, He's alive. There's a reason why the curse of sin is broken. There's a reason why the darkness runs from light. There's a reason why we stand here now forgiven. Jesus is alive. Sing it out. There's a reason. There's a reason why we are not overtaken. There's a reason why we sing on through the night. There's a reason why our hope remains eternal. Jesus is alive. Sing, praise the King. Praise the King. He is risen. Praise the King. He's alive. Praise the King. Death's defeated. thing the grave could not ignore. The grave could not ignore all of heaven's roaring. Hell, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? The world would not ignore when all the saints
In Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah stood, and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, O Lord our God. On the third, at break of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again. Oh, tremble death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, O Lord our God. He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints. My gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, O Lord our God. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God.
Father, we just thank You that we are here tonight. We thank You that we can praise You. We feel You here, Father. Be with Seth as he brings the message tonight. Let us take that in, Father. Be with those who are scared, those who are concerned, those that are anxious, those that are sick. There are so many, Father. Just comfort them. Be miraculously merciful. In Your name I pray. Amen. You may be seated.
Well, guys, you're lucky that I'm here on stage tonight. No, not COVID concerns, but because the NBA draft is happening at 7 o'clock. And so in honor of that, I'm wearing my Sam Presti is the real MVP shirt, okay? So the NBA draft it's kind of been a holiday for me. It's always normally happens around my birthday. And in 2008, I was turning 14, and everyone's at my house eating cake and ice cream, and I'm sitting on the floor knowing that the Seattle Supersonics are drafting for the Thunder. So I'm like, all right, I'm in. And we picked Russell Westbrook. The rest is history. Well, he is history. But Sam Presti's the present. And so in honor of him, I wore this shirt. And so this may be a short message so I can get there on time. I'm kidding. You guys know that's not true. But in honor of my failed pursuit of being in the NBA, I have a story about from my high school basketball season. So Dylan has a picture up, and for some reason, this is the only picture that I have in digital form. This is my senior picture that went in the. That's my senior picture that went in the program. And so we'll talk about the hair choices later. I did get called Q-tip by Newcastle the first game of the year. I didn't buzz my head shortly after. But I look pretty much the same. Hair's a little different, but pretty much the same. And so my NBA attempt was definitely not going to happen. But my sophomore year, we'll take it back in a couple more years. My sophomore year, we were really bad. We often played a lot of, 5 sophomores at the same time, so we're really young, not too great, and we're playing Bethany, who's normally very good at basketball. They were very good this year. And there was a point in the game where I hit 3 shots in 5 possessions, which didn't happen for me ever, and didn't happen for our team ever. We averaged 30 points a game. So, again, very bad. But after the 3rd shot I made, I think I made a 3, and then I told the coach, I was like, I can't feel my legs. Please give me a break. And so I ran back, played defense. At the next stoppage, took me out. The game ends sometime later. We lose by 30. Don't think about it. It was the norm, okay? But that's not the point. The point is, the next morning when I got up to go work out, my football coach, Coach Coons, pulled me into his office. And just to preface this, Coach Coons is still today the most intimidating person I have ever met. Still tremble at his presence. And so he said, hey, come to my office. I said, okay. So walk in there, sophomore me, and he's like, you hit a couple shots there, and that was pretty good. I was like, yeah. He's like, don't ever ask to come out of the game again. I said, okay. And that he said, here's the deal. Your coach knows. He either says you're benefiting on the court or you're not, and he'll take you out when you need to. So you play until someone tells you to stop. And so I really took that mentality through up until now. I like playing old man has-been intramurals or pickup. I still don't take myself out of the game just because Coach Coons, maybe he scared me into it, or maybe it just makes sense. Until someone tells me to get off, I'll stay and play the hardest I can. And tonight, the church hack that I've been given to talk about was how to serve without growing weary. Okay, so that's been my topic, how to serve without growing weary. And how I'm trained, how I'm wired, is that Coach Coons' voice in the back of my head saying, just work harder, try harder, keep pushing, and eventually you'll get through it. It'll be the end of the game, there'll be a quarter, there'll be rest at the end. And so of weariness, I think of, that physical exhaustion. He's like, if you just keep trying, you'll prevail at some point. Then it'll be over. But weariness is more than just physical exhaustion, okay? That is true, it's part of it, but it can also be mental. It can be boredom or indifference. And it can be intrinsic, it can be extrinsic. It can be from a number of things. And so, before I get into this topic, I had to do this for myself. We have to get rid of this myth that weariness can be defeated, okay, that it can be won against, because we're not invincible. Getting older does not make us invincible to these things. We don't get spiritual superpowers to ward against this, because the world is broken and life is tough. It legitimately is. And we can feel that right now. You guys can feel that. You know what that feels like. The people of the Bible were no different. If we look back at the disciples, they walked with Jesus. They were mentored by Jesus, yet they faced the weariness and difficulties of the broken world. And look at Paul in 2 Corinthians 11. He's just saying, I've been shipwrecked. I've been snake bitten. I'm in jail. I am tired and exhausted of this, but Jesus is worth it. But he was not exempt from the weariness that came with living on earth. And so tonight, I'm not here to give you a pep talk. Randy Lee would say I'm not very good at those, and I would agree with her. I'm not a big pep talk guy, but I do tell the truth to a fault. I tell the truth to a fault. And I hope tonight that through this message, you guys can see through the truth, through God's truth, the joy and hope that we can have in Jesus. So let me pray before I dive in. So God, thank you for today. Thank you for these students. Thank you for these adults. Thank you for the opportunity for us to learn from you. Lord, speak through me. I trust you more than I trust myself. And so, Lord, bless this time. Let us glean from the information you have for us. Let us take it and live lives changed for you. Lord, I love you and I thank you. In your name I pray. Amen. And so tonight we're going to be in the book of Ruth. So we're going to be looking at 3 people's lives in the book of Ruth. And so the book of Ruth is actually in the Old Testament, and it's sandwiched in between all of those very long chapters at the beginning. So it's after Judges and before 1 Samuel. And you're like, why are you here? Because in the Old Testament, we think of all of the big-time heroes, the patriarchs. We think of Noah and Abraham. We think of Moses. We think of these big guys with these big stories that impacted the world that led to Jesus. But there's a reason that Ruth was given to us. There was a reason these 4 short chapters are given to us, because this story was instrumental in revealing to us the story of Jesus. And you see, the book of Ruth, it took place in the time of the Judges, okay? So flashback, I'm in Old Testament in seminary right now. It's pretty miserable, but I did learn something, okay? So it's in the time of Judges, and so that's following leaving Egypt and following wandering in the desert for 40 years. This is following Moses' death, and then they have finally arrived to the Promised Land. And so Joshua has gotten everything established in the Promised Land, and then right after Joshua dies, it's the reign of the Judges. And really, how you can define it is that the 12 tribes of Israel basically have continuous conflict, trying to gain power. It's just a time of great social and political and spiritual distress. Sound familiar? So this is the time of the Judges. And after Joshua died, no leader stepped into place. And so there was great apathy by the Israelites. They didn't have a leader. They didn't like following the laws. They said, we're bored with this. We're apathetic against this. They were physically exhausted from fighting one another. And so that caused great weariness among all of the nations. And so this is where we get to zoom in on the story of Ruth. And rather than talking about how to serve without growing weary, I want us to focus on this. I think it's a better message to take away. It's how serving helps us persevere through weariness. Okay? How serving helps us persevere through weariness. In doing that, we're going to look at these 3 characters. And I'm not going to read the whole book. It's only 4 chapters. Please go home tonight and read it. It's a great story. But I'm just going to pick here and there to read from. But I'll read Ruth 1, verses 1 through 5. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife, Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died. She was left with her 2 sons. These 2 sons took Moabite wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the other was Ruth. They lived there for about 10 years, and then both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And so the first character and the first point of this story, this lesson, is Naomi, the selfless servant. Okay? Naomi, the selfless servant. And so we see Naomi's story. She was forced to leave her homeland. the tribe of Judah. That's where they married within their tribe. They grew up, they had land, they were descendants. It was a big deal for them to leave, but they were forced to leave because there's a famine. They couldn't survive any longer, so they had to flee in order to find life-sustaining opportunities. And so they fled to Moab. So that's tough, right? If we're forced to leave where we're comfortable, all of our family, that's tough, external circumstances. But then when she gets to this foreign place with her two sons and her husband dies. Man, it doesn't get much worse than that, right? Well, except the only thing worse than that is your 2 sons dying as well. So life was awful for Naomi. She had reason to be weary. She had reason to be tired. The emotional and physical toll that she faced was real, and there's no pushing through this. You can't just try harder to get over the loss of your husband and the loss of your 2 sons. And what she's left with were these 2 young women who were tied to her in the covenant of marriage, okay? Whenever they agreed to marry her sons, they agreed to take care of their parents. And so she was bound to Orpah and Ruth. And so Naomi, in her weariness, was like, you know what? I can handle this. I'm willing to suffer, but I'm not willing to let all 3 of us suffer. I love you 2 far too much. Let me take this burden. Let me live a life alone and bitter and struggle until I die, but I don't want that for you. And so she asks, later in chapter 1, she asks, okay, Orpah and Ruth, please go back to your home. Go back to your parents. Go back and have life. Life with me is not life. I can't offer anything. I don't have a home. I don't have a way to make money. Go to your parents. Have someone to protect you. Have someone to get married to. Have kids. Have a normal life. And we see that this was done out of love because of the reaction of Orpah and Ruth. Rather than being like, yeah, that's probably smart, they clung to her. They said, no, we don't want to do that. But again, Naomi begged. She said, please, leave this to me. You go. And Orpah, she went. She chose, all right, I'll go have a normal life. But then Ruth said, she clung, and she said, I'm staying by your side. We can see that Naomi, her life was bitter, but she was so selfless in the way that she had served them that this relationship, the reaction of Orpah and Ruth, didn't stem from the last year of difficulty. No, it stemmed from 10 years of mentoring and loving on them and caring on them, that so much so that they clung. They said, we need you. And Ruth said, I need you more than I need my family. And this gave Naomi a purpose. When it seemed like there was no purpose for life anymore, Naomi said, I want to stay with you. And I ask us, are we selflessly serving in that way? Are we engaging in these types of relationships that not only are wide and all-encompassing and mentoring, but deep, to where the love is so strong that we're willing to forgo the things that would benefit us for the sake of others? Are we building those types of relationships? Because God makes relationships possible for a reason. We have relationships so we can do life with people. And this is what life looks like. This is the promised life that we're given. And so are we doing that? And I want you to take a few seconds and write down, who are some people that you would cling to, that you can confide in, that you can trust in when life gets to be its worst? Write down those names, because I want you to know that there are people in your life who can walk you through and hold your hand and pick you up whenever you're at your breaking point. You are not alone ever. God gives us these relationships for that. So I want you to write down names so that you know you're never alone. You have people who love you. And that changed Naomi's life. All right, so point number one, we have to be a selfless servant like Naomi. All right. Point number two, we're talking about Ruth, the humble disciple. Ruth, the humble disciple. So we already know kind of her immediate background, but take it back further. Ruth is from Moab, all right? Moab is, they don't necessarily get along with the people of Israel. Deuteronomy 23 mentions that the people of Moab are not allowed into the promised land, that their actions, God says their actions have been they have wronged us so much, they have wronged the people of Israel so much that no Moabite may enter. So that's pretty serious conflict. But that's not why she's significant, that she's a Moabite who marries an Israelite. She's significant because her response in this most serious and weary time of her life. And I want to read the words that she said as she clung to Naomi in verse 16. 1:16. Ruth said this, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." It reminded me of Chris Tomlin's song. It said, "Where you go, I go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Where you move, I'll move. I'm going to follow you everywhere." And so she said this to Naomi. And there were attributes that she clung to as a disciple of Naomi, and she had learned and taken so much from her. But it wasn't Naomi the person. Look at her last statement. The period on the statement is, "I'm doing this. You don't tell me what to do because I'm doing this because your God is my God." She made the statement that, yes, I know that life can be normal again if I return home. But I want the life with God, no matter what that looks like in Bethlehem. Even though I'm not allowed in the promised land, even though no one in Israel is going to marry me, and there's no chance and no future for us, your God is my God. I'm going to do life with you. You know, those aren't the words of a widow. Those are the words of someone who has a purpose, something to go to. Despite her circumstances, she had something to cling to, and that was this woman, this widow who had nothing to offer, but a God who was worthy to follow. Like I said, Ruth had everything to lose, leaving the people of her birth, leaving her family, leaving her father's blessing, leaving a marriage, leaving kids, leaving a job, having any social status at all. She left all of that because Naomi was worth it. And so they head back to Bethlehem, having nothing, having nowhere to go. A woman in this time couldn't just get a job and provide for one another. So they go, and the humble disciple that she is, she says, "Naomi, I'm going to go with you. And I'm not only going to go with you, let me provide for us." And so providing meant being a beggar. She chose, rather than normal life, she chose to be a beggar with God. Normal life, she chose to be a beggar with God. And what that looked like was she had to go to the fields and pick up the leftover scraps. She had to glean, the word is glean, from the fields. She had to pick up the leftover scraps to hopefully provide enough for her and Naomi to survive. How humble you have to be. What a servant you have to be to do that. Do we put other people above ourselves in that way? Do we forego the things of this world that we can work for, that we can attain, that we set these goals out there that we can achieve? Or do we set all of that aside because we choose to say, "My God, your God is my God, and I'm going to follow that. Doesn't matter what the immediate circumstances are. I trust that more." And so she followed. And that leads us to our last person and our last point. Boaz. All right, Boaz, he is faithfully obedient. Faithful obedience, okay? And so the introduction we get to Boaz is this, that he is a wealthy, honorable man of Elimelech's clan. All right? And so just think back, Bethlehem is any small town in western Oklahoma. So say like we go down to Duke, Matt, we go down to Duke and we get there and Matt's like, yeah, that's my cousin. Yeah, that's my cousin too. Well, not actually, but they're my cousin's cousin, and we're probably related somehow. And so everyone's cousin's cousin has land, and so that's just what you do. You farm. And so this is the tie that they have. They're not necessarily blood first cousins, but they're descendants of Judah, so they're part of the clan together. And Boaz has a great reputation for all of the things he has accomplished now. Okay, we see Boaz now, and he has great things. He has land, he has food, he has money, he has people that work for him. But take it back 10 years. Why did Naomi have to leave Bethlehem? Because of a famine. And who does a famine impact more than everyone else? A farmer, a person who has land. And so even though Boaz looks this way now, he was in the midst of the hardest time of his life. His one job in life, his single job, is to put seed in his land and grow this to produce food, not only for himself, but for others. And he couldn't do this because the earth is broken. The world is broken. And so he had to fight the weariness that comes with year after year planting and nothing being produced and planting and nothing being produced. But eventually, in his persistence, something grew. But that's not what makes Boaz significant either. It wasn't his persistence. He didn't beat it. What makes Boaz significant was that he was faithfully obedient to God's law despite the lawlessness of the land. Okay, so even without spiritual leaders, once Boaz started to get more things, he immediately started hiring people, gave them jobs. And then he started allowing the poor and needy to come glean from his fields. Even though he had years where he produced nothing and he had nothing to gain, he didn't start hoarding his produce and hoarding his money. He said, "You're needy? Here, I give you permission to come take the excess of my field." He didn't scoop up and say, "Everything is mine." He said, "No, this is mine, but it's mine for you to have." And so he did this out of love. The Levitical law in Leviticus 23, God made this a rule. If you have land, don't take it all. Leave some at the edges, so the poor and needy can survive. So he was faithfully obedient to God's law, even though no one was holding him to it. He was faithfully obedient in how he treated others. And his reputation came from how he loved others, loved his workers, loved the needy, loved the poor. Him prioritizing their needs over his own made him have a reputation that was honorable. And by allowing people to glean from his fields, made this interaction happen, okay? So these two people have completely different stories, have gone through the toughest things of life, but are serving faithfully and obediently and walking in this direction. And then they have this interaction in the fields. Boaz got through life and is wealthy now. Ruth, on the ground, picking up scraps to hopefully have enough food for her and her widowed mother-in-law. Yet this is a situation God used to bring glory. If we read later, they use this one common goal of serving others for the same purpose. And that got them together to the point that they were married. This Moabite person who does not belong in the promised land, who was a widow with nothing to offer, who's a beggar, is now taken, whose hand was taken by the most honorable and wealthy person in Jerusalem, or in Bethlehem. And so they did get to see the physical joys that come from serving through the weary times and being persistent in that. And this is the result. The result is, it's remarkable. And I'm going to read verses 15 through 17 of chapter 4. It's remarkable. He shall be to you a restorer of life, a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. So it shows her love for Ruth. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and became his nurse. And the woman of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. And they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Even though their lives fell apart, even though they were left bitter and weary without nothing to offer, each individual walked in faith as servants to not people, but through people, because they loved God more than anything else in life. And they were each redeemed for their faithfulness. They were honored for the faithfulness through this son. Naomi had lost everything, but now she had this gift. She was finally able to mentor and love another child. What a gift. Ruth lost everything, was a beggar, now had this husband and this child. Boaz fought through the hardest times and now had a wife and this child. Not only a child, but a child that directly points to Jesus. Their lives were used to change the universe. And so for us, we have to live for a purpose, okay? We can serve freely without the burdens of the day's overwhelming. Like, there are things to do. We can always be active. We can always be moving. But if we aren't serving with the purpose of Jesus, who are we serving for? Because service is a surrender to someone other than you. And so if we don't know Jesus, can we truly serve others well? Can we truly serve well if we don't have Jesus as our reason and as our purpose? And so for you guys who are going through the weariness of life and you don't know where it's going to end or where it's going to start, or it all begins with surrendering to Jesus. It all begins. That is why this story was given to us. 3 people who surrendered and served so well that they were honored by being mentioned in Matthew 1. They weren't significant at birth, but their surrender and service made them so significant that they had the blessing to be a part of the coming of Jesus. And so, my question to you, are you willing to serve Jesus in a way that is significant? Are you willing to serve Jesus in a way that has purpose? Because if so, you have to surrender to it and then move forward. And guys, I'll be up here at the front if you want to visit about that. But working hard didn't change their lives. Circumstances didn't change their lives. Famine didn't change their life. Wealth didn't change their life. What changed their life was the statement of, your God is my God, and we're going to be faithful and obedient servants to your purpose. Pray with me. God, thank you for this blessing that we have to walk on earth through the thick and thin, through the weariness, through the joys, that we have joy and we have hope in that because you have sent Jesus to cover the sins, cover the brokenness, that we may be like Paul and it may look bleak, but Lord, your purpose is greater. That even if we can't see it now, we can have absolute confidence in the hope of eternity. But Lord, that's only available through the blood of Jesus. So tonight, I trust you to work in hearts, to change how we live each and every day, to be persistent servants so we can combat whatever this broken world throws at us. Lord, I love you. I'm so thankful for this opportunity to share your good word, your good truth, that is the most important thing in my life. So, Lord, thank you for these students. Thank you for this church. In your name I pray. Amen.
Let's stand and worship together.
Oh, how high would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you are? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you graced the other side. Oh, how long have I chased rivers and only seas to where they rise? Against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. 'Cause in the highlands and the heartache, you're neither more or less inclined. I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. Oh, I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the sun who will not be light. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. No less faithful when the mountains may stay. You're the head where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, oh. Oh, how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend, oh God? From where your feet rest on the sunrise to where you sweep the sinners past. And oh, how fast would you come running if just a shadow me through the night? Trace my steps through all my failures and walk me out the other side. For who could dare ascend that mountain, that valley hill called Calvary? But for the one I call Good Shepherd, who like a lamb was slain for me. Oh, I'll praise you on the mountains. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the sun when my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. No less faithful when the mountains may stay. You're the head where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, oh, sing it out. Whatever I sing through the shadows, my song of ascent, my song of ascent. Oh, oh, sing it out. It's my song of ascent. Oh, oh, on the greatest of all rise, come the pastures we call grace, a mighty river flowing upward from a deep but empty grave. I will praise you on the mountains, and I will praise you in the mountains of my way. You're the sun, you're where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys of the sea. No rest, God, within the shadows. No rest, faithful when the night is mystery. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heart of God to sing.
What a semester. Huh? Yeah? You can clap. You can clap. It's clap worthy. That was good. Great job, Seth. What a way to finish us strong. I was kidding about that being 16 thing. You look at least 17 and a half. Daniel, everybody. Yeah. So have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. We love you all. You are dismissed.